Welcome back to The Four. It's Wellness Wednesday, and October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. A time to not only support those battling this disease, but to spread awareness and information on how their family and friends can support them. I sat down with Dr. Schaefer to explore why sometimes trying to fix a situation is not the best course of action, and how you can shift your approach to something more helpful. Let's get well. We're sitting down once again with Dr. Schaefer on our Wellness Wednesday. This month is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this can be a tricky topic because it's already something that drastically affects the life of the person going through it. But what we don't focus on a lot is everyone in that person's orbit, friends, family, and how do they support this individual while simultaneously not overdoing it, for lack of a better way of putting it. So, Dr. Schaefer, first things first, if someone were to come to you and let you know, I've been recently diagnosed with cancer, I feel like the majority of us would immediately, oh, well, I did this research and you should do this, and that's not always helpful.
Yes, exactly, Eric. And I want to point out that this skill is really important to practice ahead of time because we know, unfortunately, 1 in 8 women in the U.S. will develop breast cancer in their lifetime. So this is a conversation you most likely are going to have. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to help tee people up for it so that they're not caught off guard. And it really starts with, as you said, not trying to jump into reassuring someone or offering advice, but just committing to being an excellent listener when someone chooses to come to you with this very sensitive and challenging information.
Gotcha. Now, how can we do that? Because a lot of times in these cases, it's just as scary to potentially lose a loved one as it is to be going through this battle. What is a more positive way that we can react to be helpful to the individual battling cancer?
Exactly. Well, there are several things that we can do, and it really starts with what we hinted at before, which is just in their time of need, committing to being a great listener. It may sound simple, but to be an excellent listener and support your loved one, it takes really committing to being a good listener. And being a supportive listener looks and sounds like asking open-ended questions, focusing on how that person is feeling rather than on our need to fix, which really started back in grade school when we learned how to answer questions with answers. Mm-hmm. And instead, when we're trying to show up for someone who is in this time of need, we want to ask them how they're feeling and how they're experiencing their diagnosis and what it means for them.
And do you feel like it is beneficial for an individual to potentially do some research into cancer and individuals who have gone through it already to kind of get some insight into what their friend or loved one is actually going through?
Absolutely. And conversations like the one we're having here today are really helpful. There are amazing resources out there that are written by centers that help women navigate and men navigate breast cancer, because it's not just women that navigate this disease, it's also men. And you can find those by just going on YouTube. There are excellent TED Talks on having this conversation as well. And that tells you how important it is, because when we are showing up as a listener and someone has decided to trust us with this information, we want to make sure that we are supportive and that we don't add on to the stress that they're feeling through ways that we may think are helpful but aren't, such as giving advice. If someone is already under the care of a medical team, they are likely dealing with a lot of commitments and schedules and stress, and we may well-meaningly ask them, well, are you doing this with your diet? Are you exercising? Did you cut this out? Did you add that in? And while if they ask us for advice, which we'll find out if we practice that open-ended listening, and they guide us to a place in the conversation where they are asking about things like diet and exercise and maybe what someone else has gone through, that's an excellent place to carefully give that information. But if they're not asking for it, it can feel like undue pressure and even bring them into a feeling of shame that maybe it's their fault because they didn't do certain things. And we know that that's not what we want to do. We want to be there to support them.
And I'm assuming because it's coming from a friend or a loved one that they know is meaning well, they may actually take this information, which could then counteract what their medical team is suggesting they do. So I think what this really boils down to that I'm hearing is let the medical team, let the professionals do their job, and don't be an obstacle on your friend or loved one's healing journey. Now, something specifically I'm curious about here, Dr. Schaefer, is I'm just going to kind of provide you with a hypothetical scenario here. My wife is diagnosed with breast cancer. We have kids. How do you start that conversation with your children? Because hiding it from them is not the way to go. But for me, I'm dealing with the stress of kind of coming to terms with this myself, that my wife is going to be battling cancer and I'm going to be with her every step of the way. But there's going to be a lot of things we're going to need from our children, a lot of grace when it comes to, we may miss your baseball games, we may miss your dance recital because we're handling medical issues with mom. How do we start that very difficult conversation?
And Eric, you're right. It is an incredibly difficult conversation. It's generally recommended to make sure that we are being age appropriate in how we give information to our children, but it's also recommended that we don't hide things from them because kids are really smart. They're really aware, and what they will do if we give them no information or very little information, they will fill in the gaps in ways that would really surprise us and don't help them feel reassured, don't help them feel like their needs are going to be met, because it's really normal when a loved one and a caregiver has a really dire issue that they're going through. The first thing our children are going to think about is how will it affect them and the person they love. So making sure they know what to expect, that mom and dad maybe can't go to this baseball game, but here's our plan for it. And we want you to know that we love you and we're doing everything we can to support you. And we so appreciate you being there for us when we're having bad days, because just like you, we're going to have bad days too. And we're going to ask for you to be forgiving and give us grace. And we're certainly going to do the same in return for you, because this is a challenge for us as a family and we are going to get through it and navigate it.
Dr. Schaefer, thank you so much for this insight. I feel like if there's someone out there watching this right now and they are going through this very, very difficult time, I feel like we provided them a bit of insight into how to be supportive while simultaneously giving the individual the space that they need. Where can people go for more information on yourself and get more of this great info?
Thank you so much, Eric. You can go to www.drschaeferstedranova.com, and you can also check out my podcast, Talks with Dr. Schaefer, for episodes where we discuss things like navigating cancer diagnoses and sharing people's incredible stories of how they went through challenges and now have embraced their most beautiful future.
And of course, as always, we're going to make sure all the links you need to follow up, it's all going to be available after the show today on 9and10news.com.